And now, coming to you live, the Fantasy Oddcast, starring host used to be sober and guests K-Zap and Feta Cheese. Welcome to the Fantasy Oddcast.
And welcome to the Fantasy Oddcast. This is episode 5. This is going into week 3 of the NFL season. This is post-Thursday night football, which leads us off to our first topic today. That's the Browns' victory. Who would have saw that coming against the Jets, whose defense looked good all season? However, Baker Mayfield came in and was able to lead the team to victory. Hugh Jackson made it seem like he wasn't all in on starting Baker, which would be week 4 start for him, which is surprising to me considering this is their first win since 2016 and the guy's only got 2 wins under his belt. But I guess Tyrod Taylor, more veteran quarterback, definitely I feel like is equally as talented, but sometimes you just got to mix it up. I think Baker Mayfield came in, he was much more poised. He was 17 for 23 for 201 yards, average of 8.7 yards per pass. So he wasn't slinging the ball downfield big time, but he didn't need to. Carlos Hyde finished the day with 23 carries, 98 yards, and had both touchdowns. Tyrod Taylor himself was only 4 for 14. Being 4 for 14 is going to get you on the bench real quick. You could tell he was a little bit less comfortable in the pocket than Mayfield was, with 4 rushes for 22 yards total. Only one of those was actually a positive yard gain for a 22-yard gain. Baker looked great. He looked great in the pocket. I wouldn't say he looked stellar. He definitely had some really tough passes he made and completed, and he had other ones where I think he could have went in a different option. That being said, he didn't end with any touchdowns. Again, he didn't need to, and he doesn't need to be that quarterback. He doesn't need to be Sam Darnold, who himself tried to pick the team up on his shoulders to win that game, and at the end of the day, it didn't work out well. I don't think that either option is a good start in your fantasy team. Those who want to pick up Baker Mayfield up through waivers to try and have him as a flyer late down the season to see if he's something great, but I think he's not going to be fantasy relative probably until next year, unless you get some big injuries throughout the season. You definitely need to put somebody in there. Sam Darnold could be fantasy relative. I don't see them benching him. He was 15 for 31, 169 yards through the air with 2 picks. Terrible day as a quarterback and a terrible day for fantasy. He's a stash on the bench, and to be honest with you, he'll be available in most leagues. Moving on to that, as you notice, we don't have either Feta Cheese or K-Zap. Both guys are unavailable this week to do this, so it's Lone So, your host used to be sober, for the Fantasy Oddcast. Next topic I want to talk about outside of that is the Dolphins. We talk about the Browns getting their win, but how about the Dolphins? If you had told me preseason the Dolphins would be 2-0 and leading their division going to week 3, I would have told you to go shove it, because in my opinion, I thought the Dolphins were going to struggle to win, and I feel like the Dolphins were going to finish behind the Browns in wins. Obviously, they're proving them wrong right now, being 2-0, and I believe they could be 3-0. You got a struggling Oakland team traveling the East Coast. I think the biggest thing to me in this game is going to be the running game and Tannehill. Oakland has shown that they struggle through the air, especially after the departure of Crabtree. They haven't gotten a Jordy Nelson like they have for him. So Derek Carr is still getting used to him. They haven't fed Marshawn Lynch beast mode as much as beast mode should be fed. And their defense, you drop Khalil Mack and you lose a major pass rusher. And in a team like Miami, who Tannehill was kind of on the fringe of being a quarterback in the NFL versus a backup quarterback in the NFL, he's made to be look like a good starter, and in fact, I have him down as a streaming quarterback of the week. If you're looking for somebody in standard leagues, especially standard leagues that have a 6 point per touchdown mark, but I still think Oakland's going to struggle here. They struggled in the past. They struggled against Denver, who, in my opinion, Denver looked weak too as well this year. I think Miami comes out, and I think they get a tall lead quick. And don't be surprised to see Oakland 0-3 and Miami 3-0. Going into players, give you some of advice, my personal advice going into week 3. If you're thinking about who you want to start, who you want to sit, who you're thinking about picking up off waivers, and if you have somebody stashed on your bench as a handcuff running back, are they a viable start this year? Or this week, I should say. So handcuff running backs and wide receivers that may be on your bench that I would suggest if you have a flex spot, you're on the fringe on starting somebody, here's my picks if you got them on your bench and you want to start them. Eckler, I think he's more of a big start for PPR, but in most standard leagues, he's got a 7-point projection this week. That being said, it's going to be a difficult game against the Rams as far as running with Melvin Gordon. So as you see with Eckler comes in on passing downs. He gets a lot of catches out the backfield, which is why I say PPR versus standard. However, Eckler is shown to be able to produce major chunks of yardage on passing plays, especially in the red zone where the Chargers are going to need to score. This is a game where I see the Rams getting up early on the Chargers. They've given up a lot of points. And then I see the Chargers playing comeback the rest of the game. So you won't see that ground and pound Melvin Gordon that you've seen through week 1 and week 2. Expect Eckler to get a lot more touches this week. Less on carries, probably more on through the air, but he's shown in the past, especially at the end of last year, that he can do that and he can take balls to the house. And in the red zone, he tends to snipe a lot of touchdowns from Melvin Gordon. Another big one that I think this week is Sony Michel. Sony Michel has proven that he can take chunks of yardage both in rushing and in receiving. More prominent of a role than Burkhead, it's starting to look like. I am hesitant to throw him in there over somebody else that's more solid number 2 wide receiver or a solid share back, only because you never know what New England's going to do with their running back scheme. But that being said, James White, along with Sony Michel, are definitely proven to be 2 of the better backs there. But Burkhead's still going to get his carries. Burkhead's still going to get the passes out there. Who knows? This could be a week that Sony Michel emerges as a lead guy and more of a go-to guy, maybe even in the red zone, because he is slippery. And then if you don't already have Latavius Murray, I think he is somebody to play 100% this week, especially if you could see in the ticker above, if Cook is out. If Cook is out this week, he is a must start in all leagues, both standard and PPR. The guy is shown to be a great workhorse, especially after the ACL tear last year. He led a lot of leagues. He was on a lot of big pickups last year. In fact, he could have been the pickup of the year last year, in my opinion. So if you are thinking about starting him or sitting him, obviously if Cook's out, you got to start him. If he's available in your league, pay the money for him if you have FAB. If you don't, you better hope you're at the top of the waiver wire and have already gotten him. Most leagues, he is not going to be available here on out, but he is somebody, even if Cook comes back in a little bit with his hamstring injury, great person to have on your bench, even a great flex to have, because I could see him sniping some touchdowns here and there. In the red zone, he'll still get his carries. That being said, talking about Cook being out, I think this is the perfect game for him to be out. In my opinion, if you have anybody on the Vikings offense, you got to play him. Whether you got Thielen, Diggs, Murray, Cousins, those are guys, Kyle Rudolph. These are guys, every one of them is a must start because the Buffalo Bills are terrible this year in the NFL. They're going to give up points. They're going to play from behind. They're going to turn over the ball, especially to that Vikings defense, which means the offense will probably be on the field a lot more than expected. Wide receivers, I'd say number 2s that you're thinking about flexing. If you aren't already starting Deshaun Jackson in your league, if you have him on your bench, start him. His chemistry right now with Fitzpatrick is unbelievable. On top of that, he is a home run hitter. You're going to get big chunks of yardage. You're going to get touchdowns because the guy's fast. And he's going to get those opportunities because Fitzpatrick likes to take those downfield chances, which is great. He is the number 2 to Mike Evans still. Mike Evans is a clutch go-to guy. He's got the good hands. But I'll tell you what, right now, Deshaun Jackson is proving himself to be one of the better receivers fantasy-wise this season thus far, and that's all due to Ryan Fitzpatrick and his arm and his ability to make plays. I think John Brown technically is number 2, took Michael Crabtree in Baltimore, but has proven already that he can be a number 1 option for Joe Flacco. He, again, is like Deshaun Jackson, big chunk yardage plays. He's found pay dirt in the end zone multiple times already this season, and he's going to continue to get those big yardage plays and run those bigger routes outside of Crabtree being more of the safety valve, I should say, for Joe Flacco. However, Joe tend to be somebody who wants to sling the ball. He's got the arm to do it, and he's going to take the chance downfield whether there's double coverage or not. So if you have him on your bench and you can't decide between John Brown and another guy, I think John Brown is a viable option this week. And I honestly will see him break into a wide receiver 2 option over the next couple of weeks. And last one I have is Emmanuel Sanders, and it's the same page as John Brown. He's the number 2 to Demaryius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas has struggled a little bit, dropped some balls. Emmanuel Sanders has been the one who's been open more often. He's going to be open more often, and he's going to prove to be a viable wide receiver 2 option outside of a flex play if you got him in your lineup. Hold on tight to him if you have a better option this week. But I still think look forward to Keenum and those teams to start scoring points a little bit more. I don't know about this week. I don't think he's a good option to Keenum, that is, to play. But Emmanuel Sanders is going to be the person that's going to be open more than Demaryius Thomas and make the plays when needed. You'll notice that again this week. And that brings us to our starts and sits of the week. I want to talk about who I think my top 5 options for starts, my top 5 options for sits, and my number 1 in each category. I'll work 5 to 1. I think one of my favorite parts about this little segment is it is all your opinion, but you get a chance to really break down. And it's week 3. I know people think, oh, start this person, start that person, sit this person, sit that person. It is early. My picks are based on matchups. I'm looking at the matchups. I'm looking at the teams they're playing, and I'm looking at what type of game may be. Not necessarily, okay, this is a tough defense, but necessarily where is that team going to be in the third and fourth quarter, and will that player be called upon to make a difference in the game? And you'll see by a couple of my picks, it's going to happen that way. I'm going to start off with Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is a start for me this week. I already mentioned Deshaun Jackson. I like him here. But Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson, those 2 guys are starts for me. Evans is about 12 point in standard leagues. I think probably obviously a little bit more in PPR. He's going to get more catches than Deshaun Jackson. But the 2 of them this week, again, to see Fitzpatrick come up with big numbers. Let them keep rolling, keep moving. They're gonna throw the ball a lot more because right now their backfield isn't looking that good, and so they're gonna definitely call upon their receivers. Tevin Coleman's another one for me. I think Tevin Coleman, without Devontae Freeman playing this week, he's a must start to me, and he's a top 5 start for me because they're gonna ground and pound that ball against New Orleans, who's gonna be a tough opponent in the air. I think week 1 they were terrible against Fitzpatrick, but that wasn't necessarily a fluke. Fitzpatrick did it week 2 again. Week 2 for New Orleans, they were much better in the air against the Browns. However, they gave up some big plays. Don't expect it to be a Julio Jones show again here. I think Tevin Coleman, again, cracks 100 yards and gets a touchdown this week. Kenyon Drake, I think, is a massive start this week against Oakland. I think he has proven himself to be the workhorse there. I know Frank Gore's there. Will be a change of pace here, and therefore Kenyon Drake. But I think they're going to ride the coattails of Kenyon Drake. Ryan Tannehill is going to do well. He's another guy who would be on this list for a start for me against Oakland. Expect them to come out 3-0. Kenyon Drake hits the end zone. I say he gets about 80 yards on the ground and maybe another 15 to 20 to total 100 yards overall. This is one of the ones that I think people may think is going to be a interesting choice, but I think both Odell and DeAndre Hopkins in that game are must starts. Obviously, they're must starts. They're 2 of the best receivers in the league, but they're my starts for the week because you're talking about 2 0-2 teams. that are going to need to take some shots downfield, need to take some chances, and who better take chance on than your go-to guys on each team? And right now, we obviously know the Giants' go-to guy is Odell Beckham. He didn't get enough plays sent his way last week. All the commentators talked about it all game. All the analysts talked about it after the game. If you want to win football games, New York Giants, you got to feed your best player on the field. Saquon looks great, but he's shown already that he's going to make plays. He's going to score touchdowns, but he's not yet in that role to be able to take the team on his shoulders, like a Le'Veon Bell and running backs such as that, Todd Gurley. This is going to be Odell Beckham's game for him to not only break out fantasy-wise, but get the Giants their first win. On the flip side, same thing with Houston. Again, you saw DeAndre Hopkins week 1. I think he had about 70 yards receiving. Week 2, he was able to hit the end zone. He looked good week 2 on a couple big plays. But when you want to get points on the board, when you want to make big plays, you got to go to your big playmaker. And DeAndre Hopkins is the guy in that team. Yes, Will Fuller's got speed. Yes, he can create separation. But Hopkins is the one with the sure hands. He is the one who's going to be able to find the pockets in the defense. And right now, Eli Apple's going to be gone for this week for the Giants. There's going to be opportunities. Being a Giants fan, it's hard for me to say the Giants are going to be 0-3, but there's a good chance they're going to be 0-3 this week. Houston definitely has the better offense and defense amongst the both teams. But both are 0-2. You never know what's going to happen. I say they're both starts for me because, like I said, both are going to get those big opportunities. Both teams are going to need to throw downfield, and both quarterbacks are going to have to take some chances this week. Which brings me to my start of the week. My start of the week is going to be a three-headed monster, in my opinion. Latavius Murray Cook is out. Kirk Cousins and Stephon Diggs. If anything showed last week, when you get the ball into Diggs' hands, he's going to make big plays. Adam Thielen is a nice safety relief valve for Cousins, and he's getting himself 100 yards here and there. He's gotten touchdowns last week as well. However, Diggs is the playmaker receiver, just like an OBJ, just like a DeAndre Hopkins. If Cook is out, Murray is a must start, especially against that defense. And I think Cousins may not repeat the point total that he got you last week, because who knows how long they're going to be on the field for and how many rushing touchdowns may come of it. But he has shown that he can throw the ball well, and he's shown that he is going to throw the ball deep. He's going to be able to make plays, and expect him to be in the 30s for fantasy points this week. That's my starts of the week. My sits of the week, I'm going to start with Colts running backs. I think that's kind of an obvious. Colts running backs haven't proven much at all this year, period. And I'm nervous, again, against Philadelphia, a good defense. In Philly, tough place to play. I don't see them doing well. I think this is going to be an Andrew Luck show if they're going to even come close to winning a game. T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck are the two to even play in that game. Maybe an Ebron if you want to get touchdown dependent. And Doyle hasn't really shown pay dirt yet for them. I say another big sit, Case Keenum in Baltimore against that Baltimore defense. Denver's 2-0, barely. I would say 2-0. Baltimore's 1-1. They look terrible on that Thursday night, but you got to give it the Thursday night, week 2. That's a tough game to win. Week 2 Thursday night game after you just had a great week 1 victory against Buffalo. I think Baltimore defense comes back swinging. I think they're all over Case Keenum. I think it's going to be a tough day for him. Expect him to be in the mid-teens as far as fantasy points. He's going to give the ball up a couple times, whether it be in a fumble or interception. He is definitely a not start for me. If you got another option flyer-wise, like I said, Tannehill is a great option to pick up if you have that opportunity. I think Golden Tate is another one here that is on my sit list. You're in Detroit. They're 0-2. You're playing a Patriots defense who I think is pretty good. They lost last week. They're going to come back with a vengeance against this Detroit team. Matt Stafford's going to make mistakes, and we know he's going to have to go to the air. It's just tough to tell who he's going to go to. Tate has been the one to get open here or there. Galladay has been a home run hitter. He's been found in the end zone a couple times. I think it's going to be difficult to say I'd rather start Golden Tate over another flex opportunity or wide receiver 2 that may have a better matchup. I just don't like this matchup on him. Expect a bust from Golden Tate this week. Another one for me is going to be Larry Fitzgerald against Chicago defense. Again, another team 0-2 against a tough defense that, in my opinion, is going to be all over Sam Bradford. It's going to be the David Johnson show. Again, in a game where you're going to go to playmakers, Fitzgerald's your playmaker in the air, and you've got David Johnson, your playmaker on the ground. I think Fitzgerald gets hurt hard here because he doesn't have the surrounding players around him. You don't have that John Brown there anymore, taking downfield chances, opening up pockets for him among the defense. Is he going to get his touches? Yeah, he's going to get passes his way. I don't see Arizona making it to the end zone that often. They got Agusa against the Rams last week. I don't expect many more points this week. If you got the Arizona kicker, this may be the option for you over Larry Fitzgerald. I expect the Arizona kicker to get more points than him this week. And my sit of the week is going to be Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers historically throws for a lot of yardage in games. The team is always down. They're always playing from behind. They're 1-1 this year, which is huge. However, expect the LA Rams to be all over him. That pass rush is really good. Their D-backs are really good. The Chargers they're going to be able to shut down main receivers. I think the biggest thing you're going to see is a comeback type of game from Phillip Rivers, and we all know when he's coming from behind, he likes to take more chances, risky throws, rather than throw the ball away, and in turn gets picked very often. Expect a couple turnovers. Expect high yardage from him. I don't know how many touchdowns he's going to get, but either way, he's going to turn the ball over, I say 2 times. I say he's going to have 300 to 320 yards passing, maybe about 350, maybe 1 touchdown. But the Rams are going to really, really stifle this Chargers offense. It's going to be a tough battle for them this week in the Battle of LA. Those are my starts and sits. This is episode 5, going into week 3 of the Fantasy Oddcast. Thank you all for tuning in and watching. Comment below, hit the subscribe button. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know how I did next week. We'll be posting up another one. We may sneak in a couple Tuesday night prior to waiver wire pickup options and talk about waiver pickups each week. But other than that, expect a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon posting of the Fantasy Oddcast. Hopefully next week we get both my brothers here, so we have Feta Cheese and K-Zap, and get their opinions on these, because I'm sure they've got their own starts and sits for you guys. But these are mine for the week. I'm your host, Used to Be Sober. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to me on YouTube, and check me out on twitch.tv during the week as well for streams of all types of games. Can't wait for Black Ops 4 Blackout mode. Currently playing Black Ops 3 and Rainbow Six and PUBG. All right, thanks again. Tuning in. Catch you all next week.